I have a question for you. Is your network really secure? If you're not sure, maybe you need a router or a firewall for your home or your office. Let's go ahead and jump in, take a look, and find out how.
Oh, it's Blackburn and tech, we're leveling up. From networking paths to systems we trust. Let's break it down, let's build it back. Together we're learning, right on track.
All right, welcome back to Blackburn and Tech. All right, so if you want to have your own router or firewall, do you really need it? It comes down to if you're using it for like your house, do you want to have a little more control over it? Or if you're in a business, maybe you have some employees, you want to limit what they're doing online. That's definitely, as you can see, some of the pros on this. You typically get a little better performance out of having your own router or firewall. And typically, you can control what size you get and how much power it has for what you need. The enhanced security is definitely nice because, especially if you get a firewall, reputable firewall, you can typically add more like content filtering, and if there's known attacks, then it can kind of prevent those from coming into your environment. The reliability of your device is definitely a little bit better because you know that you bought it, and especially if you buy like one that's new, you know that chances are it's going to be reliable to stay up. And the privacy, it's not cloud. Typically, they're not cloud controlled, and you have a little more control of where it goes. Even if it is cloud controlled, you actually get to dictate how it is and where it is. Some of the cons that go with it is upfront cost. When you say you get a router from your ISP, for example, they give you your equipment, you plug it in as they say, right? The disadvantage of that is that you don't have to pay for it up front, but you'll notice typically there's a service charge for equipment rental on your bill. And that's how they get you, because $5 doesn't seem like much until you realize you're paying $5, $10 a year, for example. And they can vary by different providers. Some of the setup complexity can be challenging depending on your environment. Say if you're say a small business, you have one big network, and maybe you have a guest network that's not very complicated to set up. But maybe you're a larger organization that you want to start doing a lot more advanced stuff. It can get a lot more complex on setting it up. Some of the compatibility issues definitely come into play. Some ISPs will let you do it, some of them won't, and you got to make sure that you get the appropriate device for your type of network. And that also applies to, hey, do I need this type of wireless? Do I want to run fiber optic? Do I want to run multiple switches and everything else? It can get kind of heavy on that one. Technical support is kind of limited unless you say if you go to a firewall vendor or a firewall reseller or something like that. A lot of companies offer like managed support, so it's not too bad. You can still get support for it. But troubleshooting it on your own can be a little bit challenging if you're definitely not a technical person. You can obviously look up YouTube videos on how to do most of the stuff on them, but if you are not very technical, sometimes that can be overwhelming. As well as firmware management, like software updates on the box. A lot of people don't think about it, but it's an electronic device that's on the network, so you definitely want to apply security patches and software updates to it. It's no different than a computer. You just basically want to make sure that it's appropriate. If you have an ISP one, for example, your ISP takes care of it and you don't know it, or it reboots in the middle of the night and it just does it without your knowledge. Versus if you're a business, for example, maybe you won't know, hey, I want to update my firmware at this time because I know it's going to be the less impactful on my business. Maybe your business works overnight and you don't want it to go offline at 2 in the morning. When you have your own device, you have more control over how it happens, which is one of the main reasons why I would say that most people switch to having their own router or firewall. Okay, the next thing would be to contact your ISP, see if you can get some information ahead of time before you do anything, and see if it's possible for them to switch their modem into what is known as IP pass-through or bridge mode. It's interchangeable terms. I've heard both with the different providers. Essentially what this does is it takes that public IP address that you're paying for, and you get to assign it to your router or firewall. And the reason why you'd want to do it this way is you don't want any barriers you don't want any translations in front of your device. Say you want to be able to use maybe a SSL VPN, or you want to expose stuff you have internally out on the internet for whatever reason. Say if you have like a web servers, that would be a reason that you would typically want to make sure you have a public facing IP address. I've also seen where they have some limitations on what hardware you can use. That's not as common as much these days. Typically, it's more of the can you get an actual public IP address to your actual device. An example of this would be like Starlink, for example. I've heard it's quite challenging to get an IP address that is public. So like if it begins with a 10 or a 172.16 or a 192.168, for example, those are what is known as private addresses, and they have to be translated into a public address. And if your ISP is doing some translation and you're doing translation, it's what's known as double translation, and it can cause some issues. So for the best outcome, you would want to be able to get your public IP address passed directly to it. If not, you can still do it. Just know that you're going to have some limitations, and chances are it'll be a little more difficult to get. Say, like I said, if you had a VPN service or something else like that, you want to be able to access something from out on the internet back to your house. I've also seen where that cause issues with some different voice over internet phones, so keep that in mind. But that's what you need to check with your ISP. Especially one of the other areas I would suggest is if you're paying for a static IP address, make sure you get all the information from them as far as the IP address, subnet, and default gateway. If you're paying for what is known as a DHCP address, so the IP address can change, that shouldn't be that big of an issue. You just need to know that going into it, so when you go to configure it, you know what to configure. If you're paying for an additional type 1, like a PPOE or a different type of service, make sure you get all the information that you can regarding that, so that way you have the information when you go to set it up. All right, so we checked with our ISP, and they said that we're good to go ahead and start buying. So now what? This is where most people, in my opinion, get overwhelmed, especially when you're not technically inclined with it. And that's completely normal. So what I would recommend to do is figure out what do you want first. Do you want a router or a firewall? Do you want more security or just it to forward packets? Honestly, I personally prefer having a firewall in place. And the next thing would be make sure that you buy an appropriate one for the size of your organization and what your organization's doing. There's documentation out there that's it's called sizing guides, and they kind of help you go and figure out, okay, well, I have this many users, but remember in their context, users is typically devices. So maybe I have this many users and this many devices, and this is the size firewall that I should buy. But you also have to keep in mind that what if your organization grows? Do you have the appropriate size firewall then? And this would be one of those times that you would want to make sure if you can, try and buy a little bit larger so that you can accommodate. But obviously don't go extreme. Don't go, well, I have 2 people, but yet, and nothing really going on my network. Let me go ahead and buy a $10,000 firewall, for example. This is where I would say definitely look at the sizing guides. And if you're going to reach out to a like a provider that sells firewalls or routers, I would go ahead and ask them, okay, well, this is what I have currently, and what would I need for growth? Always plan on a little bit of growth, and sometimes we all grow a little bit bigger than we want, but I would definitely plan on at least having some flexibility there. There's no right or wrong. Every vendor or everyone has their preference on their vendor and what they like and what they don't like. And make sure it matches what you're needing as an organization. Or even if you're doing it for your house, make sure it does what you need. Do you need SSL VPN? Do you need site-to-site tunnels? Do you need a firewall that can support a 10 gig internet connection? I'm not sure. That all depends on what it is that you need for your environment. So make sure you get one that can support what you need. And obviously, if you have if you have restrictions from your ISP, make sure that you accommodate what their restrictions are. That way, it'll be a smoother implementation. All right, now that you have a router or a firewall, now how do we start getting it set up? I would recommend set up at least the basics, get a good base configuration set up on it. You can either do that through watching YouTube videos, such as some of the ones we have here at Blackburn and Tech, or other great YouTube providers as well. Or you can use a managed service provider they typically have services where they'll help you build out your router or a firewall. And I've seen where these can come in really helpful. I personally used to work for one previously, and it was a great experience because you get to work with a little bit of everybody, whether you understand the technical or you don't. Especially the more complex you get, sometimes it's easier to have someone else build it out. If you have the time, you can go ahead and gladly build it out, or if you have the knowledge, go ahead and build it out. But sometimes it's challenging because each vendor implements something a little bit differently. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle with, is because if you're familiar with one, like if I know how to build it out on like a Cisco Meraki, for example, do I know how to build it out on a Fortinet, for example? That might be an area that you might struggle with. But ultimately, it's your call on how do you want to build it out. You can use a provider or you can build it out yourself. There's a lot of documentation out there on how to do it. Depending on your skill level is what I would recommend, is if you feel comfortable enough building it out, go ahead. But if you don't, then I would recommend getting a provider to help you with that. Okay, so now that we have the router or firewall built, let's go ahead and go live, or go ahead and plan on going live. As a reminder, this will cause a network interruption, so I would recommend to plan accordingly. So what I would do is I would troubleshoot and verify as I go along with this steps. So the first step would be to switch your ISP equipment into IP pass-through mode or bridge. So at this point, if you switch that over, you should be able to set up a laptop or a device on that port, for example. Say if you have a DHCP address, so it changes, you should just be able to plug your laptop into it, and it should obtain the address. If not, put the static IP address into your laptop. There's plenty of videos out online showing you how to set a static IP address on Mac, Windows, Linux, depending on your operating system. At that point, you should be online. If you are online and you have a public IP address, that tells you that your ISP equipment is right. Then after that, I would go ahead and go ahead and unhook your laptop and go ahead and plug in your router or firewall. And at this point, if it has the same configurations as your laptop did, then it should already go to being online and start reaching out. You can verify this typically in its configuration that it is online and communicating. It's typically the WAN port that you'd plug this into, but that can vary depending on make and model. I would go ahead and plug in your laptop on your LAN port or whatever port you have set up to just check and make sure that your device from behind the firewall is able to get out on the internet. If it is, then you can go ahead and integrate your switch if you have one. If not, then go ahead and plug in your device that you have accordingly behind it, and then verify the connectivity. So when I go into verify the connectivity, I mean, okay, so if I set up SSL VPN or site-to-site tunnels or any of these other more advanced configurations, or even just the content filtering, can I still get out on the internet? Can I still get this to happen? I would recommend doing this. Check and make sure that the reachability is fine. If not, then we'll go ahead and jump into our troubleshooting help section. Okay, so something didn't go as planned. So let's figure out where the breakdown in communication happened. Was it when you first switched it into IP pass-through mode? Did you get a public IP address? I would use a laptop or a desktop sitting there and plug it in, check and see if you get that public IP address. If you get that public IP address, then you're out on the internet. A good rule of thumb with that one is just be able to ping 8.8.8.8. And that's a good one that I typically do, because if you can ping Google, or you can get out go to google.com, for example, that's a good rule of thumb that works. So if that works, then you know you can go ahead and plug in your router or firewall. And at that point, your router or firewall should go ahead and either request the IP address from DHCP, or it should use that static IP address. If you're having issues with it and you have a static IP address, make sure that you have the information set appropriately. That also applies, say, if you have a PPOE or one of the other different types of internet provider connections. Make sure that you have everything set accordingly, such as some services that require you to change what is known as the MTU value. But I would double check with each one of those and make sure that your settings is appropriately set. And then, as far as troubleshooting the LAN side of it, I would go ahead and check on the plug in a laptop directly into the port. If you have a switch, leave that unplugged and plug directly into it. If you plug directly into it and you can get a connection, then you know that that port's live. You can reach out to the internet still. And then if you plug your switch in and not able to reach to it, tells you it's a switch misconfiguration. Or if you have more of an advanced setup where you're doing a trunking setup, then that tells you that that is the issue. It kind of gives you an idea where to troubleshoot. Now, as far as troubleshooting additional services such as site-to-site tunnels, NATs, as far as SSL VPN, content filtering, all of that will vary depending on what firewall vendor or routing vendor you have. So I would make sure that that information is checked with your appropriate vendor on that one. Typically, the most common thing is it's a misconfiguration. And it can be something as simple as you typoed a number or you forgot to turn something on. I've done it myself. So that is how I would start my troubleshooting processes. One area that I would add to that would be, so say you've already done this and you're struggling and you're still having some issues. Maybe you're not the most technical when it comes to routing and switching, and that's completely understandable. Everybody has their area of expertise, but if you have a vendor that you're currently working with or an IT provider, I would reach out to them and make sure that they're either on standby while going live or that they are actually assisting you with going live to make sure that it goes as smooth as possible. I hope you found this information informative, and I'd like to thank you for watching. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and click a like, subscribe, and it definitely helps the channel get more recognition and provide valuable services to you.